Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you are. My name is Orlando Sardaro from Design Aid, and I heartily welcome you to this 1 hour learning session for the Shell Eco Marathon. Please take a moment to review this sheet first, as we would all like you to stay safe during this session. I'm with you today for the coming hour to introduce you to the tool that Altair has available to you to design your future rider. The planning is that this presentation will take about 5 minutes. Then, of course, most interesting is the live demo, which will take about 3/4 of an hour. And we'll finish the session with your questions and our answers. I will finish at 5. So I am from Design Aid. I am a business partner of Altair, and Altair is Shell partner for the Eco Marathon. Altair is a tech company. They are a partner of Shell in this Eco Marathon. And they are developing a vision since 1985 to transform customer decision making with data analytics, simulation, and high performance computing. About 3,000 people work there. They serve about 11,000 customers. They do that in 86 offices in 25 countries, and they carry over 150 software titles, including those of partners. And revenue in 2019 was 459 million. I myself am from Design Aid. Our vision is to serve the design community with affordable, conceptual 3D design software that's easy to use. I founded Design Aid in 2005, and since 2013 we are an Altair reseller for their design products. I work with 19 people. We serve about 40,000 customers because we also sell to the smaller firms in Benelux. We have one office in one country. We carry about 25 software titles, and our revenue last year was about 4 million. But let's talk about Altair Inspire Studio. This is the tool that we have in-house for you to play around and design and create the vision of your future rider. What is it? Inspire Studio is part of the Altair simulation-driven design tools portfolio. It's a vast set of tools helping designers and engineers across the globe to realize their dreams and ideas. But also you can say it's CAD, it's design software. The tools inside are sketching, you can do NURBS modeling. A very interesting feature is polyNURBS modeling. I will go more in depth in my demo and a little bit in the sheets. And the best thing is that it serves any combination of this. So you can work with surfaces and solids and sketches all combined together. It keeps your construction history so that when you want to change something that you decided in the beginning of your design process, automatically your design will be recreated. So you don't have to start again. And when you're finished, you can create 2D drawings. They're also linked to the original design. You can create stunning photo renderings and animations. These are some of the Altair Inspire Studio customers. So although it may not be well known, their customers are. And so here you see an example of sketching in Altair Inspire Studio. You are able to create geometry that you can drive with parameters and dimensions and create 3D geometry on top of that. When you have 3D geometry, you can continue on sketching in 3D and create relationships with real NURBS, surfaces and solids. A very special type of object in Inspire Studio is the polyNURB. It consists of a polygon, but Inspire Studio is able to smooth that out into a real NURB surface. So you go from polygon to smooth NURB in just one click. I'll show in the demo. The construction history is created automatically when you work, so you can always go back in time and make changes. Automatically, it can create 2D drawings with dimensions and annotations in your own style for you to print or export as PDF documents. It contains automatic photo rendering. Just drag and drop your materials onto your objects and it does a beautiful job doing so. Now for you as a student, there is the Altair University where you can go to and download your free 1-year license for the software. So please take a moment, go to the Altair University, it's altairuniversity.com, and find the free Altair Student Edition, apply for it, and you'll be working with the software in no time. So thanks for today, and let's jump into the demo. Let me show you some of the basics of the interface and working with Altair Inspire Studio. All at the top you have a standard menu for working with files, for copying and pasting and undo, etc. Then you have a set of tools which are organized in ribbons, and the ribbons can be accessed by clicking the name of the ribbon. So if I want to work with curves, I click the curves ribbon here and all the curve tools appear. Working with surfaces, modifying them, deforming them, etc. There are several tools that are always at hand here, working with the file, saving, opening, find out how big something is, move geometry, and step into animation mode. This will always be available. Below that there's a modeling browser and all objects that you create will appear here. The construction history of your object will appear below that. Let's see how to model something. Let's create a cube. So I'll go to the surfaces ribbon and click the cube tool. Now what do I need to do? It says here in mid top, drag to create the base by opposite corners. So I'll just do that. I release my mouse. It says move the cursor to define the height and then click to confirm. Okay, just do this. And I've created my cube. I can navigate in 3D by rotating the mouse wheel to zoom in and out, and by pressing the mouse wheel to rotate the view and look my object from all sides. I am able to change the dimensions, so let's make this 5, press tab, 10, press tab, 15, press enter to confirm, or dynamically drag the object by the arrows. You can pinpoint to different positions, so you get different arrows and move from there. And if you're happy, just click the green check mark. And now my object is created. Now let's create a curve, say a circle that I want to pull through this object. Now what's important to note is the orientation of the circle. So now I'm on the curves ribbon and I'm able to drag a circle. Let's do that. And you see that it will get constructed in the top view. Why? Bottom left, you'll see the Navicube. And the Navicube resembles your 3D space. And the top plane is blue. So that is the active construction plane. If I now move a little bit more to view my object from the front, you'll see that the blue square is now changed to the front position. So if I accept this circle and I create a new one, now my circle is orientated in the front. So this is very important for you to notice. You just change the work plane by rotating the view on your object. I can also accept something by right clicking. A green check mark appears with my cursor and I can move to the left so to swipe to accept. And now I've created a cube and 2 circles. These can also be found in the modeling browser here. So there's the cube and there's the circles. I can select them here, the cube for instance, and I can then move it by clicking the move tool and click either one of the spots on the widget. What I can also do, I accept, is hide it by just clicking the icon. It's still selected, so that's why it's ghosted. But if I click beneath it, then it's hidden, or I can hide the other objects. Now let's make a trim. So let's trim out the circle, one of the circles from the cube. This will modify the cube. So I'll go to the modification ribbon, and there's the trim tool. And I click it, and it asks me for all the objects that are involved in this operation. So I just click the circle, it becomes green. I click the cube, it becomes green. I'm happy, so I right click, and now it asks me which part I want to retain. So just click this part to be removed. And there's a small widget, and the widget will allow you to give the distance for the cut. So I can make it not going all the way through. For instance, I can enter a specific distance too, press 5, enter. And when I'm happy, I right click and I accept. So now let's see what's happened in the modeling browser. The cube has disappeared. The cube has disappeared because it's now become a trim object. And if I click the trim object, you can see here below that it is constructed of the circle and the cube. So this is the construction history. And if I want to change the cube, I can double click it here, and there is the option to change it. So I can still change it and everything will reflect. There's another possibility, and that is to click the closed eye icon here. This will reveal all objects even though they are altered. Also here I can click the icon to reveal it, or I can double click to change it. But let's now leave the eye closed. So now let's do some advanced editing, and let's say that for this object I want not this circle to be trimmed out, but this circle to be trimmed out. I do not need to start over again. I just double click the trim, and here I can click which objects to use again. And then I can click the circle. This will remove it from the trim operation. The object becomes red because there is no curve to be trimmed, so there's no modification to be done. And I just click the new circle. It becomes green. I right click. I get the widget again. I can pull it all the way through. I can right click and accept. And this is how flexible the construction history is, by simply double clicking and changing which objects are being used for a certain operation. Now, to see a little bit better on top of your objects, there are some view options that you have at the bottom left. So for instance, this foremost icon gives access to certain display modes. So I can go to the wireframe mode, for instance, and I can also go back to the shaded mode. I can also access these views by just pressing the shortcuts that are displayed here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1 for wireframe, 2 for shaded, 3 for reflected, 4 for zebra, and 5 for rendering. Well, there's no material assigned, so the rendering is empty. And this is just a quick way of having a better view on your geometry. Let's talk about polynerbs in Altair Inspire Studio. Polynerbs can be found on the Polynerbs ribbon. And let's create a polycube. It works basically the same as creating a surface cube, but you'll notice when I'm finished, all the surfaces inside of the sort of boundary box that I created are rounded. For the rest, I have the same editing tools available as during the creation of a NURB surface cube. When I'm happy, I can just right click and swipe. So this typically is very difficult to model in CAD, but this is all smooth, all rounded, and all G2 continuous, just in one go. Now let's add some more edges, because I want to define the shape better. Let me say that I want the bottom to be a little bit flatter. So I go to the split tool and I pick the edge loop, and I'll add another loop on this vertical edge here. I just drag the edge. When I'm happy, I release. I can do the same at the back and maybe at the front, a little bit like so. And this already starts to show as a car safety seat for childs. And that's exactly what I'm going to model. So I'm happy now. I'll just click the check mark. And you can see that I can work with the vertices that are defining the cages. And for instance, I can select these front vertices and a small widget appears. And I can drag some handles. I can drag the arrows to move them in a certain direction. I can move the square in a certain direction both ways. And I can also scale by clicking the dots in a certain direction. And then there's also this panel showing some options. For instance, if I would like to work symmetrically, I can, under symmetry, click, for instance, I want to work symmetrically in the X direction. And now you see that everything I do on the left side will be reflected on the right side too. Very handy. So I'll keep this, this checked. Now I can work also with the edges. So I click the middle button at the top, and then I can edit the edges that are defining my shape. Or I can work with the faces and drag them and create them, etc. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to understand what I'm really creating. So if I uncheck Nurbify in the control panel, you'll see exactly what the shape consists of. So actually this is a very basic shape, but Studio is able to round all the faces inside of the cage by just clicking Nurbify here or press the N button. So now let's add some other loops. Let's add one in the middle. Just snap to the red point in the middle. And let's drag one a little bit more to the side. Yeah, this is fine. So now I'm done. What I can do, for instance, I can go to the points and I can fence select the top row and I can move these down. So I get a little bit more an interior shape, or maybe move them up for the legs. And now let's work with the surfaces, because at the back I want to create some extra surfaces. So how do you do that? Well, click the surface button at the top mid, or also a shortcut is the D. So if I go from A, S, D, it will change from working with vertices, edges, and faces. And now I can click, for instance, this back face. And instead of dragging the widget, I'll drag the white arrow. It becomes yellow. And I'll drag it out. And now you see I'm creating an extra face. And I can align according to the axis. Just snapping to it. And move it up like so. I can do that again. And then it creates a face at the front, and I can use this one. What's very important to see what you're doing is that you can always check and uncheck Nurbify. So now it's far more easy to understand what you are doing actually. So just select this face and I move it out. And now you see exactly where I'm going. And I am able to nerbify this again and really work the geometry. And I think it's a little bit too small. So what I can, for instance, do is I just select all the points at the right and move them a little bit more to the right. I can, for instance, select these points and make this a little bit flatter. And I can, for instance, select these points. Oops. Control Z, Command C. And for instance, it's a little bit difficult to see, but I can scale them out and flatter. And this is basically how you work with polynerbs. And remember, everything is totally continuous. I'm going to explain sketching in Altair Inspire Studio to you. The sketching tools can be found on the sketching ribbon, which can be activated by clicking sketching top left, and all the tools will be revealed. There are tools for creating curves, for offsetting them, for trimming them, mirroring them, extending them, filleting them. You can import entities should they be already present in your modeling area. You can place dimensions to drive them by variables or values. You can change or set a sketch plane and sketch on top of an image. The only thing you need to do to start a sketch is pick one of the tools. So I click the line tool to start drawing a line. First, I need to pick the sketch plane. Now I can pick one of the standard planes here, but if there is a face in my modeling area already present, I can also click that face to start modeling upon. But in this case it's empty, so I'll just pick the top plane. And let me draw a line. Now I've drawn a line. And let me draw a rectangle. And of course I can do it in a quick way by picking one of the rectangle tools, but I'm going to show you how I can construct a rectangle by using the constraints and only lines. This will teach you the basics. So I'll put 4 lines in my drawing, just continue drawing. And then the final line like so. And the bottom line I need to be horizontal. So I just click it and a micro dialog box appears with 2 constraints, horizontal or vertical, and let's pick the horizontal one. Then I want to have these 2 points on top of each other. So I click one point, press Ctrl and click the other point, and there's an extra constraint, coincident, which I select. Next up is that I want these 2 lines to be perpendicular to each other. I select them and I choose the perpendicular constraint. I also want to align these 2 points on top of each other, and that's done. And these 2 lines I want to be parallel, so I'll pick parallel. Next up is to align these 2 points on top of each other, coincident. Let me move the micro dialog box, Control click coincident. And the only thing I need to do now is make sure that this angle is square. I can do it in a number of ways. I can make this one vertical. What I can also do is I place a dimension between this line and say I want this to be 90 degrees. And here is my rectangle. I can now put dimensions across it, and I can, for instance, say this one needs to be 20, this one needs to be 12, and the rectangle is constructed. I can change it by clicking a dimension and drag over it. And this rectangle is not fully constrained because I can still move it in space. So if I were to have this one fixed, I can, for instance, reference to the origin. So I can place a dimension between the origin, click, and for instance this line, And I can say that this needs to be 5. And I can do the same for the origin. Just click in the origin and this one. And I can, for instance, make this 0, or I can give this another dimension. And now the sketch is fully defined. We can also see it in the legend. It is black and all the lines are black. Now a little bit about variables. I can, for instance, make this one a variable. Just click it and say create a variable. It opts as being L1, which is fine for me, so I'll just confirm. And now I'm going to create this dimension to be L1 times 2. And then I press enter. And now, for instance, if I change this dimension, L1 to be 15, also the horizontal distance will change to 30. Now I can close this sketch. You'll see that a sketch 1 entity is created in the modeling browser. And I can, for instance, extrude this into a 3D object by using the Surface Extrude tool. Now I can select the entire sketch, but I can also pick other types of selection. So if I want to take only a few lines, I'll click those lines and these will be extruded into 3D. I can also start over and say, no, I want to have the standard selection, just pick the entire sketch, give it caps, maybe not on top. And here is my 3D object. Whenever my sketch changes, so I double click the sketch, for instance, I change this, also the 3D shape changes. It updates in real time. And this is the basic of sketching. I've already prepared a file here that contains the necessary sketches. I explained sketching earlier. So let's have a look. I'm going to model a tire rim. So I'm going to revolve this sketch and this sketch about the origin. So let's go to the surface ribbon and pick the revolve tool. I'll click the first sketch and it proposes to revolve about the z-axis, which is not correct. I want to revolve around the x-axis and then of course about the origin. So that somewhere here, say 0, 0, 0. And now I'm done. I'll do the same with the top part holding the real tire. So go to revolve, click. This is already revolving around the x-axis, but the center is not correct. So let's move that down. And yeah, this is correct. Let's turn on perspective, lower back. And I've already set up the basis for the wheel. Now let's switch to a different view mode so that you can see better how it's going to be. Very nice. Now for the spokes, I'm going to use a polycube, polynerb as a base. So let's go to the right view. Let's disable perspective again. And yeah, let's pick a polynerb tool, the polycube. It's already snapping to the center, which is okay, but I want to be symmetrically about it. So I press Ctrl and yeah, this is fine. Now for the depth, move the cursor. And so this is probably fine. I'm done, so I right click. I want to move the bottom points upward. So let's make it like so. And this is just a start, of course, but so let's add some more edges. So go to the edge loop. Let's create 2 splits at the same time, multiple split, and click the top edge. Now I've, with one click, inserted two edges. Okay. And I want to make a split spoke, so I'm going to work symmetrically in the Y direction, and I'm going to extrude the right face up. So I go to work with the faces and click the face upward. Nice. And I'll do that once again. Okay, very nice. Okay, let's have a look at the points. And maybe I want to move these points a little bit more outwards, so, and a little bit higher. And maybe I want to rotate them. So drag the arc. And maybe I want to add some more detail at the bottom, so I'll create a split there. And then I'm done, so right click, work with the points and select the front row like so, and move them a little bit inward. And maybe make this section a little bit smaller, so scale it inwards towards the Y axis. Very nice. Well, to have a better view of how this is going to be, I'm going to revolve the poly cube around the origin. So right click for this, this is fine. And let's go to the modify ribbon and choose the symmetry tool for rotational symmetry. I select the part and immediately 3 copies are being created. They're not rotated around the center really nicely, so I'll just change this. I click the center and I make this 0, 0, 0. And this is fine. 3 is a little bit low, so I'll just increase the number dynamically to say 7 or so. This is already much better. I right click and I accept. Okay. So what's really not so visible is that by rotating, the shape automatically melts. So let's hide the first revolution object, and you can see that the interior is sort of melted. And what it did, it was automatically Boolean added those together. If I select the polycube and I unnurbify, then you can see that the faces that are coincident are trimmed out nicely, which renders to this shape. Okay, so now let's add a little bit more detail. Let's make the revolution visible again. And so for instance, I can make this part a little bit smaller. So let's double click the polycube and let's select the points and let's scale them inward a little bit. Now let's add another edge. So I go to the polynerb tool, split, add another edge loop, which will create some more faces, and maybe it's a good idea to connect these faces. Seems nice to me. So to better see what I'm doing, I will unnurbify and I will select these 2 faces and connect them. I click the face tool here, click the face on the right, click the face on the left by pressing Ctrl, and now right click and say bridge, and you see that these are connected. And well, let's pick the edge at the left side here and maybe move it up. Oh, I say move it up. Move it up like so. And let's see what we got. So check Nurbify. And this is really, really nice. Let's move the top points a little bit more inwards. Since I'm working symmetrically, I only need to select the left part. It's maybe a good idea to disable the snaps at this moment. Right. And maybe add some more, because I think there's still a little bit less. So double click the rotational symmetry tool and increase the number to maybe 9 or so. This is far better. So maybe clean up this area a little bit more. What I see is that it is a little bit sticking into the center, which is not good. So I'll just go to the polycube and I will move the bottom points upward until they no longer stick. So this is nice. At the same time, let's see if I can get rid of this edge here by maybe moving the points that are here at the front a little bit more outward. Okay. So this looks pretty good. I'm not that good of a designer. You can do a much better job, I'm sure. Let's enable perspective again. And let's combine these shapes together. So first thing I want to do is cut off the parts that stick out. So I go to the modify tool and pick the split. And let's go to a different visibility mode. Let's click 2 for better visibility. So what are the surfaces to be cut? This is it's rotational symmetry. So what is the tool? So I click the tool here and then the rim. And then I'm able to click the parts that I want to delete. So that's this sticking part, and then right click, accept, voila. I've cut off the pieces that were sticking out. And now I'm able to add these 3 together. So I go to the union tool and I click this one, and this one. Right click, and I'm done. And now this is one piece that can be manufactured. Thing I'm missing is the holes for the bolts. Well, I have already prepared a sketch that will be those bolts. So if I show this and I select it and I press the Y, then it gets isolated and I can work with it. So this shape I want to revolutionize around the X-axis. So let's go to the surface ribbon, revolve, click the shape, and then I need to enable snaps again, and I want to change the center of the revolution to be this. And now I have one so to speak bolt, and I want to make a copy of this, and then I would like to have 5 copies around the origin. So let's go to the modify ribbon, let's go to symmetry again, click it and move it down, and apparently I didn't click the bolt, but I did click the sketch. So let's go to the object and click the sort of rewind button and then select the right object. So this is basically what it should be. Let's click the origin, let's make that really 0, 0, 0, and let's increase the number to 5, and I am done. And so I press the Y again, and now you see that the remainder objects are visible again. One thing I forgot is that now I have two objects created, the original bolt and the copies. If I click the copies, I want to combine these, so I need to check it here, and now the remaining object is one. So now I have two objects, the bolts and the rim. I'm going to combine these. Go to the subtraction tool, and it asks me to select the objects. It proposes to subtract object 2 from object 1. So object 1 is the rim. I'll just click it, right click because I'm done. Now it asks me for object 2. A little bit patience. Yes, I click the radial symmetry, the bolts, right click, and there is the result. I'm happy, so I check mark. And now going to the 3 mode and see what I have created. For modeling the car body, I would also recommend using the polynerb tools, but since the car body is a sheet metal, I would not advise to begin with a 3D object, but more like a 2D. So go to the polynerbs tools and pick the polyplane. I'm starting in the front, and then let's create a plane of about the size of a car, so that, like, say 5,000 millimeters by 150 centimeters. Voila. Okay, press F to zoom fit, and now make subdivisions to be able to change this rectangle. And voila. And now I'm able to manipulate the points to create, for instance, room for a wheel at the back. And this is a very difficult to understand what you're doing, so nerbify while you work to have a better view on your model. Still, I would say this is very difficult to create a nice shape like this. So actually, I would always recommend with this technique to use a sketch as an underlayment. So go to the sketching tool and click image plane. Now drag an image as big as the plane I drew, and then import your sketch. And there it is. It's highly transparent, but I want to make it a little bit better visible, so I decrease the transparency and I say OK. And now I select the image and I press W. This will invoke the move tool, and I can drag it down to better match my plane. When I'm done, I check mark, and now I'm far better positioned to change my shape. To not accidentally select the image, I can uncheck the blue check mark here with the image plane, and so I can no longer select it, and I can really only work with my polynerb tool, I must say. And so now try to work your way, putting the geometry nicely around your object. And still you see that it's a very tedious job. I'm not so good at this, I must admit, but there is a tool inside of Studio that's really helpful for you. So let's have a look at that. I'll delete this plane and let's go to the polynerbs ribbon again. It's the wheel arch. So I click it, and it allows me to select the center of one wheel, define the car body, the wheel body, the entire body, and then click where the second wheel is located, and it will automatically create sort of a car body for you. I'll hide the image to make it better visible. And while you create it, you can still change the radial subdivisions. I would always suggest to keep these as low as possible. You can lift the wheel body. Let's show the image again to better see what we're doing here. and then the panel subdivisions for creating that door, and I'm done. So this is not changeable afterwards, only by editing the edges, for instance, and the loops. So, okay, this is what I created. And now let's shape this to more resemble the image I imported. So let's have a look at the back. What I, for instance, can do, I see that these points are too low, so I'll just move these to let's move these to a different position. And I can, of course, move them all the way to the other side, but it is also an option to extract some extra edges here. So I'll do that. I'll switch to the edge edit mode, select this edge, press Ctrl, this edge, and then by the small arrow drag out an extra set of edges. And I'll do the same with the top two. Voila. And now I'm able to edit those points I created to better resemble the underlying image. I can do the same at the front. Let's do that quickly. Go to the edge edit mode, drag out two of those, go to the point edit mode, deselect, select the points that you want to edit, and put them in the right places. You can, of course, also add splits to define some extra edges. And now let's leave it as it is for now, and let's see how you work with this in 3D. So I'll hide the image plane, and first let's see the faces around the wheel. Let's pull them out a little bit. So by pressing Ctrl, I will select those faces and I'll move them out. You can really see how nicely and smoothly the car body becomes this way. You can, of course, select any face you want and pull it out, or add extra detail as you go. That's really up to you. Now, how you work in 3D with this is basically the same by extracting the edges. So I'll go to the edge and I'll select the edges I want to pull out to the other side. Control, Control, Control. Maybe this one as well. I forgot one at the front here. And now let's switch the view a little bit more from the front and then drag out with the arrow. And you see that I am able to create this in 3D. Now also here you can add some extra splits to better define, to better define the shape later on. And of course the car is always 3D and typically symmetrically. So what I want to do is mirror this to the other side. So this is okay. I accept this shape as it is, and I'm going to go to the modify tool to pick the symmetry tool. And this is not a radial symmetry, but it is linear, and it proposes to mirror across the wrong axis. So I say no, this needs to be the y-axis, and automatically it gets placed at the outer edge of the original object. I want to combine the result with the input, so I get one object and I check mark. Okay, so now this is fine, but unfortunately I cannot edit it anymore. So I can double click it, but I will get into the symmetry mode. So what I want to do is sort of destroy the history on this object. I go to the edit command and I say collapse construction tree. Do you want to remove the source objects? No, I don't. And voila, now I have one 3D object that's perfectly editable. Of course, I want to have it symmetrically, so I'm going to check for Y to be symmetric, and then if I change it, for instance, let's change the points, Let's pick these two here and move them in or out. Then you see that, that it's done on both sides. So you don't have to worry about that again. And you can really work your way through the design this way. To show you how it looks when it's finished, I have a sample model for you. And here it is. And this is also a real polynerve body. So if I click it and I press the N, it unnervifies. And you can really see that it is exactly the same object that we created earlier. So yeah, use this as a little bit of inspiration and have a go. This final topic is about rendering out a nice image. To render this model, go to the rendering ribbon. You'll find some rendering tools there, but you'll notice that maybe the view doesn't change. So go to the bottom left and pick the last icon to the right, and you will end up in interactive rendering mode. So now automatically you see that the car gets some shadows and a matte white material. So how do we change the materials? We open up the material library. And the material library contains several sections of materials. For instance, for the car tires, let's pick a rubber. And here is a tire rubber. So I'll just drag it onto the tire. And there it is. For the rims, let's pick a metal. And let's pick an anodized, a matte metal. Just drag it onto the rims. And there you go. And for the car body, let's pick some metallic flakes. Let's make it a black one. Just drag it onto the body. And there you go. I'll close the library now. And you see that automatically there is some light, there is some shadowing going on. For this to set, you have to go to the environment button. And there you see on the first page that this is a sort of an image that's being used for throwing the light and for the reflection, and I can change it by clicking it. I can, for instance, set it to a sunny beach. Just click it, and there we go. Now notice there are no shadows. To set that, check the ground option in the background panel. And if you don't like the shadows coming from behind, you can, for instance, rotate the entire image by 180 degrees, and then the shadow comes from a different direction, you get a different view. So you can play around a bit, and if there's a setting to your liking, you can keep it, or if you would like the reflection and the lighting but not the background, you can go to the Maps tab, and for the background map, choose a custom. And then change this horrible green to white. And there you go. Now, if you want to change the materials, you can just double click an object and it will bring on the material dialog box. And there you can change some settings. For instance, I can change that black to a more red. You can change reflection, etc. And if you're happy with the result, then just click the render icon and it will start rendering immediately. And depending on the settings, it will be done in either a few minutes, and when you're happy, just save it out and you can use it for your presentation. let's see how this car looks rendered and finished. And there it is. I hope you like it. I hope you enjoyed it. It was short but sweet. And I wish you great luck modeling and rendering the future rider.